High alert on the Korean Peninsula today, and it could have direct effects here in the United States. It's a complicated situation, no doubt, but we're going to try to break it down for you, starting with a skirmish at sea yesterday. That's when the North Korean and South Korean ships met up near a disputed maritime border that's west of the two countries. Each side accused the other of crossing the border. South Korea reports that its Navy killed one North Korean sailor and nearly destroyed the North ship. Now, the South says it's ready to respond to any provocation from the North. A few hours later, we learned the Obama administration has decided to send Stephen Bosworth to North Korea as a special envoy. His job there? Convince the leaders to return to six-party negotiations on North Korea's nuclear program. In other words, talk the North Koreans into talking. North Korea has been in and out of those negotiations for years now, and it's been a two steps forward, one step back situation all along. The North agrees to do one thing and then turns around and does another. So why in the world would we think this time would be any different? Let's bring in Jim Walsh now. He's an international security expert and research associate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's been directly involved in previous nuclear talks with North Korea. Jim, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Shep.
It seems like same old thing. I mean, why should we think this is going to be any different?
Well, because in part because of the way you described it, two steps forward, one step back. I'm a results guy. You know, at the end of the day, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that when North Korea is involved in negotiations, it's better behaved and we have less problems than when it's not in negotiations. When it's outside of negotiations, that's when it starts throwing stones, nuclear tests, missile tests, and the like. When they have been engaged in negotiations, they actually are often productive. They froze their reactor for a decade. During that decade, they were not producing new nuclear material for nuclear weapons. So I think it's for the good. And frankly, I think that's where we're going. This is all atmospherics for what I think is probably a done deal, which is I expect the North Koreans will return to the six-party talks and that there will be direct U.S.-North Korean negotiations in parallel with that.
Of course, now we're dealing with the aftermath of this conflict between North Korea and South Korea at sea. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, it could have been an accident, but I sort of doubt it. You know, you want to fight the tendency to always assume a master plan. But in this case, I think it probably was deliberate. If it is deliberate, you should think of it as just another sort of thing that North Korea does often on the eve of negotiations. It will do something to try to create a crisis, thinking that gives it leverage at the bargaining table. And I think if that's what they're trying to do, then our best response is not to overreact, but to stay steady and pursue our goals. Our goals are a nuclear-free peninsula and stability in Northeast Asia. And I think we should just keep focused on that and not be distracted by the fireworks.
And is it your sense that South Korea will be equally measured in its actions?
I think so. I mean, North Korean and South Korean relations haven't been great this last year or so, but it's not the only year that that's been the case. You know, we've had other incidents back in 1999 and in 2002. There were naval incidents in which there were exchanges of gunfire. And then a year after those exchanges, suddenly you start to have agreements and progress towards some sort of stable outcome. So that's sort of what North Korea does. It creates a crisis on the eve of going into some sort of negotiation. If that's the case here, then ironically, this may be a good story. It may mean we're moving towards bringing order to this disorderly, troublesome part of the world.
Hope you're right, Jim. Jim Walsh, good to see you. Thank you.